CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lamp.
Right, we are going to catch up now with Duncan Humm. He's a deer farmer based in, I was going to say mid-Canterbury. I always get this wrong. G'day, Duncan. It is mid-Canterbury, isn't it?
Yep, I'd call it mid-Canterbury.
Good man. You're also a deer farmer, also one of the co-founders of the For Your Sins, the New Zealand Farmers Facebook page. How's it going?
Yeah, well, it's just one of those things. There's always something interesting happening, or it's always very stimulating, and it's hard to say which ball I'm juggling the most lately, that or actually the farm's taking a bit of a back seat at the moment for a few other interests, and she's all go, really.
All right, deer farming though, things going not too bad for you guys, right?
Yeah, pretty steady and easy as she goes, really. Venison side's looking good, and Velvet's got its, not without its troubles, but a few green shoots.
Well, we're not going to labour on this because I know Sarah wants to talk about this next week, but quite a big announcement out of South Korea, and we'll do some real detail on this. Just give us a really high end on it.
Yeah, so basically for a long time there's been, well, I guess Velvet, being a 5,000-year-old medicine or more, its benefits have been well known for a long time, but quantifying that in Western medicine and modern medicine's been the challenge. So it's been some very smart people working away for what seems like an eternity now on quantifying those and all those attributes and what can and can't do. And they've managed to isolate some things that are quite useful in Western medicine. And Reese, as you'll find out next week, has been over in Korea signing some deals and concluding the research, and it's commercial now. So, there's going to be some great products coming into Western medicine, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, because there's always been, and you know me, I'm always a bit suspect about these sort of things, but there's always been a bit of sort of hocus pocus about this. But what you're saying here is that, a bit of witch doctory, but this is actually proven now. The science is backing it.
Yeah. Yes, I suppose it's taken what is what's been used for a very long time for many various things. There's not just one product. There's many applications it's had in Chinese medicine and Asian medicine, and that can do various things. But just defining it, proving it, and putting the science behind it, which is quite cool. Which, obviously New Zealand, we scienced the crap out of Velvet to begin with, to modernise the harvesting and all that sort of stuff. So now it's cool that we're moving into a world where it's in medicine and can be used for more things, which is cool.
Yeah. Duncan, one of the debates which I know that you're actively involved with, I see you popping up at times, is the GE debate. There's been a lot of discussions about this, and not just that, but also the Fair for Farmers talking about imported products coming into New Zealand from overseas countries with inferior animal welfare regulations. Walt Cavendish has been making quite a big noise about this, and also Federated Farmers. There's been a bit of a stoush going on. You've been watching this. I know you have, so have I been. What do you make of this discussion?
Well, I think, it really comes back to probably like the true essence of like NZ farming and the robust debates and things we have on there often, or, we try to have these discussions at times. And I think that what's really cool is when people, random people step into the limelight or choose to step up and make their voice heard. I think it's actually really can be a very constructive thing. When people like Walt come out of the woodwork and come up with some pretty big ideas, or even try to drive big campaigns or things like that. To try and better agriculture in New Zealand. So there are some ups and downs with it, of course, but I really like seeing the constructive side of it and all the nuances that start coming out. It's been really interesting to read some of the stuff that comes as a result of it. So the stuff that blows up on social media, isn't it? It's the nuances that someone random will come up with that adds to the discussion and helps progress things. And because, we all want farming to do better, and we want all farmers to do better. So, the positive attributes of it, quite a good thing, I think.
What have you made of the Federated Farmers' response to what Walt and what Fair for Farmers, and quite frankly, I can see more people kind of weighing into the debate as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that's, like a good progression to the discussion is if more people are wading in, that's great. I think Fed's response was probably a bit, I guess, reactive to being attacked, which is, that's only natural when, if they see it as an attack rather than an opportunity to have more discussion or perhaps bring the issue to the limelight more or into the public arena. So I thought they were a bit wishy-washy with their response and sort of blaming, I guess not blaming Feds themselves, but blaming everyone within Feds for saying, well, this is their position. And there's a few other bits and pieces with that. I didn't think it was a great response, but rather than take something and say, well, right, let's figure it out and go forward. I mean, but actually on the positive side of the Feds, they did bring up some of the risks. I don't think we should all be just extreme fearful, don't do anything because we might offend someone overseas and affect markets. Like, I think we need to be braver than that and really go, right, well, what can we do to make things better?
It's interesting, the Fed's response, and we did an interview with Carl Dean on CountryWide Connect, and he was I thought quite defensive. We've seen Wayne Langford come out with a statement on Fed's position on GE just yesterday, which was kind of them restating, I think, that their position, and probably in a bit more nuanced terms was the way I read it. And I tried to get Wayne on the show today, actually. Hopefully we can get him on early next week to discuss it further. But I just find it fascinating that an individual, albeit with a small organisation behind him, which is Walt, has actually come out and challenged Federated Farmers and had them reacting. I haven't seen that before in a lot of ways. I don't know. I could be overstating it. I'm not sure. What do you think? Am I or not?
No, I think you're probably right. And I think it's actually probably, I guess in this new media world we're in, when you compare to 20 years ago, say, well, there wasn't this opportunity for ordinary grassroots people to have a much of an impact outside of industry groups, or the most you could do is write a letter to the editor of the paper and hope it gets in, and it all was slow moving rather than quick moving. And I think industry groups have probably on the whole really struggled to adapt because they can kind of have been able to sort of control the narrative, and any dissent have been able to sort of quash it pretty quickly. And it's so I think, it's probably trying to adapt to a more open source world.
Yeah. It's interesting. You talked about the discussion sort of growing, and I sent you, coincidentally, this is an absolute coincidence, through my email today, a Substack from Annie O'Brien. And I sent you it so you could have a read of it. The headline is "Useful Idiots, the Vegan AstroTurf Organisation that has tricked Kiwi farmers," pretty much talking about Fair for Farmers and its parent organisation. And Carl Dean, to his credit, actually mentioned this in the discussion that we had with them, as this being kind of almost like an anti-farming organisation that's kind of using this animal welfare issue almost as a Trojan horse. Very interesting article that Annie O'Brien's written. I'd quite like to get her on the show next week to talk about it. What did you make of it?
Oh, I mean, Annie is a great writer, so if people aren't following, what she read, and she's across many topics, and the detail in which she's gone into that article was, right, just totally,
next
she's
level.
Did a great job. Oh yeah, she's next level, and she, really fascinating person to follow, and I've got a lot of time for a lot of what Annie brings to, especially in politics. So yeah, there are, I guess with anything, there's always, you always got to think about the deeper things behind what anyone's saying, I guess. So, I guess to roll it around back to Feds, there's always a really strong dairy faction that's often, calls the shots a lot. And, there's always these motives and, things that are lurking in the background. And so, yeah, whilst on the face of it, this animal welfare campaign, is easy to get behind, and whether supporting that organisation is the right way to go, but if nothing else, we're having a bloody good conversation about animal welfare standards and how we can improve the lot of other farmers in the country, especially pork and chicken farmers. So because that wider conversation is the thing we can't lose sight of in that constructive debate.
I liken it, and I've brought this up a few times, to the situation with battery eggs and caged eggs and free range eggs, when the supermarkets made the call in the end to the way that those hens were going to be farmed in New Zealand, and that would be on the back of consumer demand, right? And if we see the same for pork, which I think it comes back to the consumers, but in the end, pork is a cheap protein, right? But the supermarkets made the call and they said, no, we're not going to stock anything like that. Egg prices went up. There were even shortages for a period of time.
Yeah, that was, and I think that's a really good point. Like, our welfare standards here in New Zealand have been driven by the public. And, that's the welfare standards that we have in New Zealand because that's what the people wanted. So that's what we've got. So it is, how do we solve this problem of having these high standards, which is what we all agree that we kind of want broadly. So how do we try and, you don't want to manipulate free markets and that sort of thing, but how do we bring it back around to making sure that anything you pick up off the shelf is raised to a very high standard? And, most of the stuff, unfortunately, you pick up in the supermarket, we have no idea where it's come from or how it's grown. So it's,
the blueprint there is from the supermarkets and the egg debate, as far as I can tell, in the end. But cost of living, pork is a very cheap protein, along with chicken. To be honest, the white meat is cheaper than the red meat, and you can't blame people for wanting to buy. But then again, we also hold our producers to a very high animal welfare and ethical standard. So in some ways, the consumers can't have it both ways, can they?
Oh, no, I think that's fundamentally it. But, and I think actually probably the other thing we all think about the supermarket shelf in terms of where we're getting our food from, but often oftentimes you don't know. So if like hospitality would be the big driver of where food goes. So when you go and sit down at a restaurant, you might be sitting in a fancy restaurant, but you could be eating the crappiest bacon from God knows where, and so you don't really have that choice. You might be paying big money for it, thinking you're getting top quality, but you just don't know.
No, and the other thing, and we've got to wrap up now, but the other thing is with eggs, we think we're only talking about fresh eggs. We actually import powdered eggs, and what standards do they come from? So it is a really complex, and you're right. I love the fact the debate is being had. I know there's a few noses getting out of joint that the debate is being had, but I think it's a good debate.
I think, at the end of the day, probably people have said a lot about what I've said here and there and don't like it, and that's fine. That's up, if you don't like it, that's fine. But you think you've got to really park the egos, and I think a lot of people do need to do that. And I've had a few industry leaders that have tried to get in my ear to say I need to be a bit easier on them or whatever. But I think a lot of times we've got to park our egos and put the subject first, and go from there.
Mate, good chat. We will be back in touch. Duncan Humm there.
CountryWide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lapp.